Good morning, Mets fans, and welcome to a Monday edition of Driving with Mr. Met. I am Mr. Met, and the Mets are limping back home after dropping 2 out of 3 to the Arizona Diamondbacks over the weekend. Another set of games where the Mets absolutely could have easily won 2 of them, if not all 3. Although I'll argue that yesterday was sort of on Mets, and that wasn't a game the Mets were going to win. But still, the Mets played a game on Saturday night that they were leading and absolutely should have won, with DeGrom on the mound, who was fantastic, and the bullpen once again shit the bed. But I'm not blaming the bullpen, I'm blaming Mickey Callaway. Yes, I am blaming the manager. I want to talk about the weekend series on today's show, and the Mets limping home to face the lowly San Francisco Giants, which is never a good thing for the Mets. I'm going to talk about all that on today's show. After the heartbreak that was the 1-3 4-game series with the Dodgers, where the Mets very easily could have been 3-1, the Mets went into Arizona and faced the Diamondbacks at Chase Field. By the way, it's a field that I wish I could have gone to visit when the 7 line went there a couple years ago. Always wanted to go there. I've driven past it a couple of times for work, and never got a chance to see a game there. Always thought it looked like a great venue for a ball game. But anyhow, that's where the Mets played their last 3 games, and of course, in typical Mets fashion, they lost 2 of those 3 games. Friday night was a great game. The Mets obviously won. Zach Wheeler pitched well, as he tends to do more often than not anymore. On Saturday, Jacob DeGrom was, fantastic. He really was. He was back to the normal, dominant Jacob DeGrom that I think we've all come to expect from him now. Of course, he had to come out of the game early. That was in part due to quote-unquote injury. That wasn't a real injury, but still. He had some sort of a hip issue, some hip discomfort, and as a result of that, Mickey Callaway pulled Jake and handed the game over to the bullpen with a 4-run lead. At that point, the game was 5-1. I fell asleep during the game. I have to be honest about that. I actually fell asleep Friday night also. And I might get my games mixed up, but whichever night Jim Wolf got smashed in the face with that foul ball, during that 10-minute intermission there when they were swapping umpires, I think it was Friday night, but during that intermission, I dozed off and I missed the end of the game, so I did not see any of it. I didn't see things get hairy for the Mets. I didn't see the Gomez double interfered with by the fan, at least not live, of course. Same thing happened on Saturday. I fell asleep. I did not get to see Jake come out of the game. I fell asleep probably in the late 5th inning. I don't know. I'm getting old, I guess. I can't hang like I used to and watch the Mets on the West Coast. By the way, I am so glad they're not out there anymore. Last week was rough with the late nights and the tough games. It was a tough task, but I'm glad it's over. Unfortunately, the Mets did not have a great road trip, and that's the bottom line with all of this. But back to what I was saying about this weekend's series. Saturday, DeGrom comes out, and Mickey goes to the bullpen and goes to Jerry's Familia to bail DeGrom out of trouble. And he does just that. He retires. I think it was 1 batter that he faced. Maybe it was 2, but I think it was 1. This was DeGrom had pitched 6 2/3, so it would have just been the 1 batter that Familia had faced there in the 7th inning, the top of the 7th inning, or bottom of the 7th inning. Sorry. He comes out of the game, does Familia, and Mickey Callaway does not learn his lesson from the last, every time he pulls Familia. He brings Familia off the field, lets him sit in the dugout for a half inning, and sends him back out to pitch the bottom half. That doesn't work for Jerry's Familia, at least not anymore. He may have been able to do that in the past, when he was saving games for the Mets in 2015, 2016, where he was getting multi-out saves, multi-inning saves, I should say. But it doesn't work now. If you look at some of his worst appearances, they are all typically filled with multi-innings and a rest in between innings. And that's the problem for Familia. Had Callaway just pulled Familia after he got that third of an inning, that final out in the 7th, and then gone to Gazelman in the 8th, and then gone to Diaz in the 9th, the game is closed out, the Mets win. So I'm blaming Mickey Callaway for what happened on Saturday night. Now again, admittedly, I didn't see it live, so I can't really react as though I were watching it in real time. But knowing what happened, and knowing that Tyler Batchelor ended up blowing the game in the 11th inning or the 14th inning or whatever the hell inning it was, Tyler Batchelor should not have been pitching on Saturday night. And this is a problem with Mickey Callaway, and I'm very positive about him. I try to be, because he's the manager of this team, and that's that. But the problem with Callaway is very similar to the problem with Terry Collins, in that they seem to fall in love over short-term periods with certain relievers and just burn them out like crazy. Where guys like Gazelman pitching 4 out of 5 days in a row, or 4 out of 5 games back to back. Diaz pitching a whole bunch of innings. Familia pitching a whole bunch of innings. And then you've got guys like Drew Gagnon Gagno and Tyler Batchelor, and insert bullpen names here. Seth Lugo now back into the mix, that aren't being used perhaps as much as they should be. And he's not mixing these talents around a little bit. Sort of like, let's put Gagno in the game here, and if he falters, we have one of our big guns that we can fall back on if we need to. All right, that should be the way that you play that. At least you gave yourself the chance that maybe Gazelman won't need to be used today, or maybe Diaz won't need to be used today, or maybe Familia won't need to be used today, because Gagno or Batchelor or whomever can get the Mets out of that jam. That's the part of this that's starting to bother me about Mickey Callaway. And, Familia admittedly has been terrible this year. I mean, there's no getting around it. But I think a lot of his failure comes from Mickey Callaway not putting him in the best positions to succeed. And I think every time we see Familia come out for that second inning of work, whether it's the fact that he pitched a complete 3 outs in the previous inning, or, 1 out, 2 outs, whatever it was, if he's sitting, that's it. Once he's out of that inning, that should be the end of Familia for that day. Don't let him come onto the bench. Don't let him sit in the dugout. Don't send him back out for another inning. That's got to change, and I think Mickey's got to see that. I can see it watching from at home. He's sitting in the dugout. Are you trying to tell me that he can't see it? I mean, I don't buy that one bit. So that, like I said, that needs to change, and I'm hoping it does. And I'm hoping it changes sooner rather than later, because these are some games that this Mets team has lost over the last 2 weeks that are just unacceptable, and perhaps with better bullpen management, they don't lose those games. And I say perhaps because we never know what's going to happen, right? But the manager's job is to put his players in the best position to succeed, and Mickey needs to start doing that with everybody, making sure that Familia gets used when he should be used, that Gazelman gets used when he should be used, and getting these guys the necessary rest in between appearances. It is important. And I this is a pitching guy, and that's the part that makes you scratch your head a little bit. If Mickey Callaway was a renowned hitting coach, if he were like a Kevin Long who was getting his first shot at managing at the big league level, you could understand, boy, he doesn't know how to handle a pitching staff. Okay, we get it. He's a hitting guru. He should not have an issue managing the offensive side of the ball, but he should struggle trying to figure out how to do this with the pitching staff. Callaway has the pitching background. I mean, he was the pitching coach for Cleveland for how many years? And he just doesn't seem to grasp the bullpen management aspect of his job. And it's tough to watch. So that was my takeaway from the weekend series, that yesterday's game notwithstanding, the Mets played, once again, 2 more games they absolutely could have won. One they did, one they did not. And that's why we are right now, June 3rd, with the Mets 3 games under 500. It's because they're losing games they should be winning. And they've put themselves into positions to win. And this is so much like the 2015 World Series. It really, really is. Because in the 2015 World Series, the Mets led for like 87% of the innings played in the game. Just not the important ones. The 9th inning, the last inning of the game. Those are the innings that the Mets did not lead in. in the World Series in 2015. And that's very much like what's happening now, because they're putting up enough offense to take a lead, and the bullpen is letting that lead get away. And whether that's because the starters aren't going deep enough, or because the bullpen actually does stink, or because Mickey Callaway's bungling the management of the bullpen, or it's all three of those things combined, regardless, it needs to get better. Because if the Mets ever want to get out of this seesaw, 3 up, 3 down, a couple games under, maybe a game or two over 500 throughout the rest of the season, they have to be able to put together a winning streak. And they can't put together a winning streak when the bullpen can't hold the lead. It's just not going to happen. You'll get lucky a couple of times, but every third day, you're going to have one of those bullpen guys shit the bed and give up that lead. And that can't happen. Not for a team that aspires to be a playoff team. So, excuse me. I'm happy to say that the Mets are off today. I need the day off as much as they do. I'm sure all of you do too. So tomorrow night, the Mets kick off a series with the San Francisco Giants, who are not playing well, which worries me, because let's not forget who the Mets played last weekend. That would be the Detroit Tigers, and they barely escaped winning 2 out of 3 against the lowly Tigers. Hopefully the Mets bring their A game and actually play up to their competition, as opposed to playing down to them. Finally, a couple of pieces of injury news. We know Conforto came off the DL, obviously, last weekend. It looks like Robbie Cano is going to be activated tomorrow, so we'll see what happens with Adeiny Hechavarria if he remains on the team. I suspect he will, and I think we'll see we'll see Aaron Altair hit the bricks and no longer be on the team. That does leave the outfield short, but not too long after, hopefully, we should be seeing Jeff McNeil come back. So that's a good sign as well. So we'll see McNeil come back. Nimmo is way far out in the distance. And it was interesting yesterday looking at the Mets lineup. Conforto was the only lefty in the lineup. And when the season started, the Mets had 4 lefties in their lineup on the opening day roster. McNeil, Cano, Nimmo, and Conforto. And it was weird to see only Conforto as the only lefty in the lineup yesterday. But no matter what, these guys are coming back, and that's a really good sign because the Mets need the reinforcements. Rosario looks like he could use a day off. That's why I honestly think Hechavarria is going to stick around. I think they're going to start spelling Rosario a couple of days here and there and giving him a couple of days off because he looks kind of lost right now. And I think Hechavarria will stick around when Cano comes off the DL, or IL. So, other piece was that Justin Wilson should soon be off the IL. So that's a good thing for the bullpen. Anything to get some more experienced arms in that bullpen would be a welcome sight and a welcome addition. So, I will be back not tomorrow but Wednesday to recap the first game of the Giants series. It's a rematch from the 2016 wildcard game. Madison Bumgarner facing off against Noah Syndergaard. Let's hope that Bumgarner isn't what he was in 2016, and let's hope that Noah is. We'll see. Until Wednesday, thank you for watching. I appreciate it, as I always do. Follow me on Twitter at Mr_Met, and as always, let's go Mets.